generation bills. We're live to Parliament, where the minority has declared positive non-cooperation in the interest of Ghana following a meeting with former President John Dramani Mahama. Also this afternoon, the former president has criticized the appointment of known party activists of the governing New Patriotic Party to the Electoral Commission, with a call for an amendment of the Constitution to subject the EC appointment to parliamentary approval.
The appointment of known party activists onto the Electoral Commission by our current president may require an amendment of Article 43(2) to provide for parliamentary approval.
And much later, the former Finance Minister, Dr. Kwabena Dufo, has filed his papers to contest NDC's flag bearership race, with a call on the party to put in place a strategy to revive what he calls the ailing economy caused by the NPP. We're live to the party headquarters as nominations close today. Details of these stories and a lot more if you stay with us for the next 30 minutes. A pleasure that you could be a part of this afternoon's bulletin. It's streaming live on Facebook. Our handles 3FM 927, as well as on Twitter. 3FM 927, both on Facebook and Twitter. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. Let's get into the details, because government resolve to secure a crucial IMF bailout will today be tested as Parliament readies itself for an intensive battle over the passage of three key revenue generation bills. The government is anticipating raising 4 billion cedis annually from the three revenue bills, namely the Tax Amendment Bill 2022, the Excise Duty Amendment Bill 2022, and the Growth and Sustainability Levy Bill 2022, to shore up revenue as part of conditions to receive board approval from the IMF for a $3 billion credit facility. Even before Parliament gets to battle, there are growing calls for MPs to reject the bills, as it would bring untold hardship to the ordinary Ghanaian in the already challenged economy. The Importers and Exporters Association, they want the bills rejected. Samson Asaki-Awengobet is Executive Secretary of the group. He's been speaking to 3FM.
So we strongly believe that these two important tax bills that the president is declaring as too important, we at the Importer and Exporter Association want to declare it as a killer bill. And when that killer bill is being passed, what is going to happen is that it's going to create already the existing unemployment rate that is growing high. Many companies will wind up because they cannot afford. Many manufacturers, especially the carbonated drinks, water, and other things. Many companies, especially those who import those excitable duties products into the country, many companies, especially those who are not making any after the end of year, they are not even making profit, and you want to tax the person's profit after tax.
That's Samson Asaki-Awengobet. He is the Executive Secretary of the Importers and Exporters Association, not the only group who've raised concerns. The Food and Beverages Association as well, they've raised concerns. And now the General Agricultural Workers Union, they have raised concerns as well. And we'll hear from a lot more of them for you. But we're taking you to Parliament because the minority there, they have declared positive non-cooperation in the interests of Ghana after meeting the former President John Dramani Mahama today. And already, if you go on to Facebook, we're showing pictures and videos of Parliament where they are readying themselves to sit for these three new bills, namely the Tax Amendment Bill, Excise Duty Amendment Bill, and then the Growth and Sustainability Levy Bill, which will be considered today. Approval is being sought by government. The three bills are crucial bills really for government revenue generation measures, expecting up to 4 billion cedis annually. And it is a critical conditionality for securing board approval from the IMF. Remember that staff level agreement had already been received from the IMF last year, but it appears that we have to do quite a number of things to secure the board level improvement, which includes the finance minister's trip to China currently, where he's amongst many things expected to attempt a conversation with his Chinese partners for debt restructuring. And so those and many more constitute really the concerns ahead. But let's speak to Edward Carroll. He's the General Secretary of the General Agricultural Workers Union, one of the groups who are challenging or asking Parliament to reject the three bills. Mr. Carroll, many thanks for speaking to us. Some feedback, if you could kindly turn off your radio set for us so we could have a conversation. So these are difficult times for all of us. The Ghanaian economy isn't... Mr. Carroll, can you hear me, please?
I can hear you now.
Yes. So I'm stating that the challenges of the economy are quite very well known, and it continues to take a toll on all of us. These measures, these revenue measures that are being introduced by government are but one of the necessary steps to be taken to help us come out of the difficulties, yet you say that Parliament should reject it. Why?
Well, the line is not too clear, but what I've heard is that, we can't tax ourselves to development. I mean, there's no development strategy that will allow you to tax yourself to development. You need to produce. But unfortunately, it appears that our development strategy is to continue to raise taxes, is continue to introduce new taxes, hoping that will lead to generation of more revenue. And then when we have more revenue, then we can now develop. Without looking at the other side of the coin, where revenue is useless until you check your expenditure. If you don't have wise expenditure, prudent expenditure in areas that will lead to further production of the economy, but just spending on consumption without emphasizing on productive areas, it matters not how much revenue you get. You will not be able to get out of the economic challenges that we have found ourselves. Again, who are you taxing? The very people that you have been taxing, that is individuals and companies and producers, are those that we are still singling out to tax. When we talk about expanding the tax net, we are talking about bringing in new persons and institutions that were hitherto not being taxed. But not that you continue to tax the same producers, the same individuals, and hoping that you'll have more money. In fact, that's a sure way of collapsing the economy further.
So you're just against it in totality. You don't want to see these tax measures. What should be the government response then if you say these taxes should be rejected?
Well, we know that unfortunately, the government does not appear to have solutions, and their only hope is the IMF. And indeed, we have had cause to indicate that IMF is not a solution to our current problems, because the issues that we are faced with, IMF cannot deal with them.
We appear to be quite far away from that conversation, because we are now in negotiations with the IMF. We've had a debt restructure where the finance minister is in China seeking to restructure external debt as well. And the resultant effect are these bills, which are in which is in Parliament, seeking to be passed. And so really, if you don't want it, where should government look at to raise more money?
Well, the point I'm just making very strongly is that we have psyched ourselves to the point where we think there is no alternative. It's either IMF or this country will not exist again. And I'm saying that is just a wrong mentality.
Right.
So what we need to do is to cut down our own expenditure. We are not seeing that happening. We need to build trust. And to build trust, you need to see the people who are managing us exhibit exemplary life, in practical terms, but not just in rhetorical terms. When we say we are cutting down expenditure, we must all see it. It is not just about what we say on radio, on TV, or just announce, but what is on the ground. So this is what we need to do. So there's an alternative. But you see, if the so-called no alternative, and that we must meet the conditions at all costs. If we don't meet those conditions, then Ghana will not exist. It's not the case.
Right.
So we can alleviate our current situation by admitting to ourselves, by applying ourselves to austerity measures that all of us can see, and build confidence and build trust among ourselves.
Right.
And many of us will join. Many Ghanaians will join. But people are really skeptical about, the government's attempt to say that they are cutting down expenditure because they are not seeing it being done.
Right.
The effect is just minimal. We need it in a substantial form, and we need to see it because it's verifiable. It's tangible. We need to see those things happening.
Right, Mr. Carroll, I'm sure this is a conversation we'll come back to you on because we're going to Parliament. But many thanks for speaking to us. That's Edward Carroll. He's the General Secretary of the General Agricultural Workers Union, one of the groups now who are also strongly opposing and asking Parliament to reject all three new revenue measures. Let's take you to Parliament now, where the showdown is expected. Komala Kluche is our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent. And the former president, John Dramani Mahama, has been meeting the minority in Parliament. Komala, what has been the outcome of that meeting ahead of a crucial sitting today?
The entire minority team is resolved in their total rejection of these three bills. In fact, they have declared a non-compliance or a positive non-compliance in the rejection of these three bills, and also the passage of the CI in the current form in which it finds itself. You recall that they are looking for an amendment of the CI, which is looking at the guarantor system, which has become a subject of controversy. They want it amended, to which the majority is not budging, and also on the issues of the bills, they say that they would want the bill actually be re-looked at. But the majority is equally not budging with respect to that. So, as we speak now, the House is almost getting full, and almost all members of the majority side are here. I know for a fact that 136 members of the NDC minority are in Parliament as we speak now, just awaiting the Speaker to come and start business of the day. And once this debate goes and it comes to the decision, strictly, they intend to actually do a rejection of this. They say that they are resolving their numbers. Now, with respect to whether the majority has the full complement of their team or not, I have not.
Which was a question I was coming to, as to this returning or this going down to the numbers game and voting. How is it looking like for the majority side? And you're saying Adjo Safo is not present in Parliament.
I've seen a good number of them over here, but I am unable to tell. I've not seen Adjo Safo in Parliament as we speak, so it's quite unclear. In fact, just about 2 or 3 days ago when she came to Parliament, you could see not that relationship that actually exists in the past, that an MP who has not been around for some time comes around and the colleague MPs goes either to embrace of that camaraderie. It wasn't there, and so I'm not sure if they've been able to convince her even in that regard as to whether she's even going to be voting for them if they come or not. It remains an unanswered question though. But in terms of the minority numbers, 136 of them presently in the presence of Parliament, just awaiting the Speaker for them to, for want of a better word in their own terms, pull the dagger. Because for them, clearly the government has not shown any commitment in reducing the size of government. They've not shown any commitment in burden sharing. and all of it. And if you're imposing further taxes on the people, I mean, that could be a cruel thing. Even though, yes, we are aware that government needs these three bills to be able to show up a little over 4 billion or so thereabout that they need to be able to secure the IMF deal.
Komla, we'll come back to you as and when Parliament does begin. That's Komla Kluche. He's a parliamentary affairs correspondent, and it promises to be a hotbed of controversy at the legislature of government today because, as you heard Komla state quite clearly, the minority are in their full numbers, but it remains to be seen if the majority will have their full complement as well. We're staying, we're moving away from this, but staying on the subject of politics and the conversations from yesterday's event held by the former President John Dramani Mahama, because he's called for the amendment of Article 43, Clause 2 of the Constitution to subject the appointment of board members of the Electoral Commission to parliamentary approval. It follows the appointment and subsequent swearing-in of Dr. Peter Ampiahene, an alleged sympathizer of the NPP, and two others to the governing board of the Electoral Commission. Delivering a public lecture at the UPSA auditorium in Accra last night, Mr. Mahama proposed a number of amendments to reduce the overbearing influence of the executive in governance. This, he said, include key appointments.
So the Electoral Commission has become topical. The appointment of known party activists onto the Electoral Commission by our current president may require an amendment of Article 43(2) to provide for parliamentary approval of new commissioners appointed onto the commission.
So that's the argument put forth in relation to the appointment of persons to the Electoral Commission. Well, he has backed calls for public funding of political parties as well, which was the main focus for yesterday's event. We can take a listen to the former president.
We must understand how politicians finance their campaigns for office and to whom they are indebted and are expected to pay back. It is therefore important we engage in a sustained discussion and build consensus on funding political parties within the context of public policy to promote good governance and democratic practice in Ghana. Regarding the needed reforms, the starting point may be Chapter 7 of Ghana's 1992 Constitution, Article 55, and also the Political Parties Act, Act 574, that regulates campaign financing. Whereas in the Constitution, room is made for non-financial support for political parties by institutions and external bodies. The Political Parties Act, Act 574, on the other hand, provides that only citizens of Ghana may make a contribution or donation to a political party registered in Ghana.
So that's the former president. That's been reactions to this. One from the former Auditor General Daniel Yao Domelevu, who spoke to Alfredo Kansi on Ghana Tonight.
The activities that the politicians or aspirants of public office, be it presidential or parliamentary, are going to engage in is a public service. So in principle, public activities or public service activities must be funded from the public fund, just as we do not expect them to use public funds to fund their personal activities. So that is the principle. However, the use of public funds must be regulated carefully by law. The regulatory framework for this is not very clear. The laws that are on the ground as to transparency and accountability for party funding has not been respected or obeyed over the years. So we may have to ensure we have the right legal framework before we put our public resources there. Otherwise, we are going to open up a waste pipe. I think that anyone who invests so much money into coming into office may like to recoup it rightly or wrongly. And if especially the person borrowed the money, then it must be refunded to wherever it was borrowed. But then what we need to know or to do is to first put a limit on how much one can spend on party funding.
That's Daniel Yao Domelevu. He is a former Auditor General and one of the individuals most noted for the fight against graft in this country. We'll be subjecting a lot more of the commentary from the former president to some scrutiny, including that on a review of who goes onto the board of the Ghana Police Service. We're picking thoughts of some security experts and the argument made by the former president for a fixed term for the Inspector General of Police. Let's hear from Mr. Mahama again on his comment on these two matters.
Additionally, I'm aware of calls for more autonomy for the police service and to ensure the rule of law by amending Articles 202 and 203. These voices advocate the depoliticization of the Police Council and call for the appointment of leadership of the police service for a fixed term with security of tenure. This, it is believed, will loosen the current overwhelming control the executive maintains over the security service.
That's the former President John Dramani Mahama. Dr. Adam Bona is a security analyst, one we speak to very often here on 3FM. Dr. Bona, many thanks for speaking to us this afternoon. And so, reforms as announced or suggested by the former president, should he win come election 2025, your thoughts on them and whether or not these are the reforms needed to transform the Ghana Police Service?
Your line, I can hardly hear you.
Dr. Bona, is it better, please?
Yes, I think it's better now.
So I'm asking the two reforms, a fixed term for the Inspector General of Police and also a change as to who gets onto the board of the Ghana Police Service. These two reforms, are they what we need as a country to really see a transformation in policing in the country?
Oh, yes, good afternoon. As far as this comment is, as far as I am concerned with this particular advocacy by the former president, it's a very welcome, advocacy. And I say so because some of us have been advocating for many years to have a fixed term of office for the office of the Inspector General of Police, just like we now have for the Special Prosecutor, we have for the Electoral Commissioner, and, if NCC and some other fixed term office holders. The simple reason is that in every country where the police is thriving, the police is doing well, you'll notice that there is little political interference. If you go to Europe and America, those who actually run the country, even though you might think are the politicians, you know that when you arrive in Germany, if it's Berlin, Düsseldorf, wherever, in London, anywhere, New York, the moment you land there, you know the police are there to ensure that things are done right. And so in a country where the police is allowed to work, that country develops faster, that country becomes stable. You won't have a situation where sometimes the military will, run around, and sometimes because some unruly citizens have taken advantage of them, they go about beating people. You won't find that in a country where the police is actually running, the internal security independently. And so as far as I'm concerned, it's a very important statement coming from the former president, none other person than him. And so it's a very important statement he's made, and I welcome it.
Just briefly on who gets onto the board of the Ghana Police Service. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about that. You, in fact, have spoken about that for a while. Does this give you some assurance that the start of this conversation could bring about some changes, even if we don't get to these are just clausal statements, really? Even if the former president doesn't win, we can begin to see some action being taken in the present that reforms to the board of the Ghana Police Service.
Well, some of us think that the former president, who we know is likely to contest again for the upcoming 2024 election, maybe he can use his influence to slot that into the manifesto of the NDC. Apart from that, it is a very important conversation we must have because, we have an IGP who is about 50, 53, 54. And so if we have an IGP who is in his mid-50s, chances are that if we have he has a fixed term of office. It means that, when the Nanado is living, President Nanado is living come 2024, whoever takes over, if he's handing over to an MPP government or is then handing over to an NDC government, you know that the IGP's office is guaranteed. You are not going to have any disturbance, and so internal security and making sure things are done right continues. Unlike, we have always done where a new leadership comes, or even when the, under the current dispensation, we've had 3 IGP. And so mine is that I think this is a very important conversation we must have.
Dr. Bona, I appreciate that you could speak to us this afternoon.
Thank you.
That's Dr. Adam Bona. He is a security analyst speaking to us this afternoon. You're listening to the news here on 3FM 92.7. We're streaming live on Facebook as well as on Twitter. The handle's 3FM 927. Stories have been bringing to you Parliament to determine fate of government quest to secure crucial IMF bailout. With the House set to approve or reject 3 crucial revenue generation bills. We've been hearing from Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Komla Kluche, who tells us the minority are in the House in their numbers, 136, and they are bent on not seeing these revenue bills approved. The majority, on the other hand, are gathering and seeking to ensure that it is approved. And so Parliament will be the hotbed for the news cycle today. If you stay with us here on 3FM 92.7 on Facebook as well as on 3news.com. Let's do some politics now, because the opposition NDC is today closing nominations, and former finance minister and flag bearer hopeful of the NDC, Dr. Kwabena Dufo, he's urged the NDC to put in place a strategy and a clear vision to help revive what he calls the ailing economy caused by the NPP. He says the NDC may inherit a difficult situation in 2025 after the general elections in 2024, but the party is capable of reviving the economy as they've done in the past. We're speaking after I filed nomination forms at the party's head office in Accra. My colleague Evelyn Tingma has been following up, joins us with a lot more. Evelyn, talk us through his commentary today and the quest to have the NDC set up a team that can revive the ailing Ghanaian economy, as he put it. Well, it appears we've lost Evelyn Tingma on the telephone line. We'll try one more time and connect with her to get a lot more details. But Dr. Dufour's filing makes him the 4th out of the fourth, really, not out of 4 out of 4 for those seeking to contest to become the flag bearer of the NDC. Him, John Mahama, Asante Korbia, and Kojo Bonsu have all successfully filed their nominations. Evelyn Tingma has joined us again on the phone. Evelyn, walk us through exactly what's been happening at the party's headquarters when Dr. Dufo arrived.
Hello, Mawuena.
Yes, Evelyn, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
I'm asking, talk us through the arrival of Dr. Dufo and what his comments were when he met the party leadership.
Right. So, Mawuena, at about 11 a.m., the former finance minister, Kwabena Dufo, arrived at the party headquarters here in Accra, and he came with a very massive support base and a battery with heavy security. So he met the leadership of the committee, of the election committee, and he presented his nomination form to the committee. And what he briefly said was that one of the major aims of his is to strengthen the grassroots base of the foundation of the party, which he says to have been neglected for far too long. And so he is interested in strengthening the grassroots base. And he also said that the Nana Akufo-Addo government has worsened the economy due to excessive borrowing and poor fiscal management. And he has therefore urged the NDC party to have a strategy and a vision to be able to revive the economy when they come to power in 2025. This is hopeful that they will definitely come to power in 2025. And he was also talking about the fact that he is going to restore hope and national pride in Ghanaians. They voted for in 2020 and just majority way. And then subsequently, when NDC comes to power in 2025, they will definitely return to the Ghanaian people and national pride. And so he made some promises also to the people. He said the cadres have been neglected also for long. And so when he comes, he will give them establish a pension fund for them. And for the women also, he said they will have their rightful place in the party. And so the Ahonto project that he has been embarking on, he said greater portion of the Ahonto fund will go to the women. And so basically, that is what Dr. Kobna before has been speaking here at the national headquarters of the NDC, Mawuena.
Right then. Many thanks, Evelyn, for providing those details. My colleague Evelyn Tingma at the NDC headquarters, and in this afternoon's edition of the Bulletin here on 3FM 92.7. Business comes up shortly. A lot more news when you log on to 3news.com. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. Pleasure for listening and watching. Good afternoon.